thank you for a very kind introduction. And two things. I sometimes tend to speak very fast, and with this echo, that might become a problem. So if I'm speaking too fast, somebody just be brave and show me, slow down. And a second thing, I'm not multitasking with emails while I speak. This is my notes, and I'll look at them sometimes if I'm losing my point. So when I was invited to speak here, thank you very much for the invitation. And I had discussions with Björn. My first thing was that I don't want to talk about structures of lifelong learning. And I'm interested in those because I'm a fierce believer in welfare society, and structures for lifelong learning are part of that. And I think welfare states and nations are genius because they provide important things through supportive structures in scale. And we at Demos, we think that renewing those structures of lifelong learning is really urgent question that has been brought with the transformation of work. But today I don't want to talk about that because I first kind of want to think with you, what are we after with this transformation of lifelong learning? And also, since the beginning, I have had an intuition, and Björn was also suggesting to share some of the projects that I've been involved in the past few years. And I kind of knew what I wanted to tell you about them, but I was still struggling to find an articulation to my point. And then Yuval Harari, the historian, thinker, came to my help. I ran across a recent text of his from his forthcoming book, and that helped to bridge or connect the dots between my experiences, our thinking at Demos, and his thinking of the change and the questions we're facing. So I will introduce some of those dots, and hopefully we can develop more dots to the story afterwards. So I think it's pretty clear to us all why there is now so much talk about lifelong learning. And it's of course, like in Finland, I don't know how it's in Switzerland, but we have tens of committees at the moment thinking of the reformation, and it's on our present government's agenda. And the why there is, of course, the speed of change, the technological, the social and cultural change that we are facing, that is requiring us to relearn new skills and knowledge all the time, and kind of reset ourselves. But for me, that discourse of skills is not covering the whole story, and that when we need to relearn all the time, it's not just learning, capacitive learning, but it's kind of like we are faced with a question of, am I capable? Can I? And those are really hard questions. It's kind of a really unfair task given to the 21st century people to kind of questioning themselves all the time and relearning all the time. But there's also even harder question looming, and Yuval Harari has put it, I think, very well. He says that from the time immemorial, life was divided into two complementary parts. A period of learning, followed by a period of working, where we were allowed to apply what we learned. And of course, there was some learning happening still, but it was more a little bit incremental things. And he says by the middle of the 21st century, accelerating change plus longer lifespans will make this traditional model obsolete. Life will become apart at the seams. There will be less and less continuity between different periods of life. Who am I? Will be a more urgent and complicated question than ever before. He says that in order to keep up with the world of 2050, which we're touching here today as well, you will need not merely to invent new ideas and products, but will above all need to reinvent yourself again and again. So, according to his argument, the skill of reinventing yourself becomes valuable. And then there is the question, how do we teach a skill of reinvention? And I have no idea. I hope to explore some leads on how we can develop that skill, and maybe later we can think together how is there ways to teach or to build those kind of opportunities in scale. So the question of who am I and am I capable of and so on, there's an array of courses and coaching and whatnot provided to us. And mostly I think they urge for introspection, to find our inner strengths and understand who we are and so on. And those are provided by the private sector, but also, for example, the unemployed, they are offered courses of rebranding and marketing yourself, and those are offered by the public sector. For me, there are two things that are bothering in this. In the private sector especially, it's very much about self. Even if it's group methods, it's still about yourself, so it's very individual. And the second thing is that in skill development, the public sector is really concerned, the focus is heavily on keeping people employable. And that, for me, is bothering because it seems that many of us will not be employed by anyone in the future. If the talk of the early 2000s was the precariat, that kind of class of people who have only short-term contracts, the next talk of the town might be unnecessariat, those who are not given any work in the sense that we have now. So to continue Harari's point of the skill of reinventing yourself is not only myself, but ourselves as collective or society or communities. That becomes crucial. Also here I can refer to my favorite thinker, Hannah Arendt, who is always, whatever topic, she always has a point to support you. And she has said that she has given education the mission that it should prepare the children in advance for the task of renewing the common world. So then the question, how and where can we learn to reinvent myself and ourselves? And like I said, I don't have any definite answer for you, but I was encouraged to introduce you a few projects that I think have managed to strike these chords. So this is a project we started already 6 years ago. It's school peer-to-peer teaching model. And it started as a collaboration with Helsinki Festival, which is the arts and culture festival in Helsinki, and they just invited us to do something in an old derelict mental institution. And we came up with the concept of a school where the point was that we said that we believe that everyone has something to teach, and that in this school, anyone can teach anything. And we asked, what would you teach? People loved the idea, but they were like, I don't know what would I teach. So we helped people discover what they could teach, and we trained them to be teachers in 2-hour training. And the call was answered. We had a kind of one-day event where there were 200 peer teachers with 200 different subjects and 700 people participating. And we just provided a platform. We didn't, can we actually get the sound off? maybe I can get it off from here. No, yeah. So we just provided a platform. We didn't ask what people should be teaching, but and I have to say, nobody could have created the program. We had sock heel knitting and double Dutch rope jumping, and there was Socratian dialogues or basics of consultations or how to be a dad, and so on and so on. And the thing was that people were highly, highly excited. The so-called students were excited, but the teachers were just, it was such an experience for them. And I think I've never been given so much thanks for any project than that. People still come up to me, oh, are you doing that again? I remember that was such a wonderful a day. And I think why it was so like a big experience for many people was that there is something very vulnerable when you're teaching someone. You're kind of opening almost yourself there and try to connect with people. And that's first a struggle, and then when that connection happens, it's really strong. And the thing was that people were surprised by themselves. They were surprised by the capabilities of other people and them as a collective. When they saw all that diversity of things, the curriculum and the school, they were kind of amazed, blown away by our collective capabilities. And I've seen that with the adults in Helsinki, and then with adults and teenagers and children in Nepal, where we piloted this, and also we piloted the Zadri refugee camp in Jordan with Syrian refugees. There is a rap singing lesson going on, there is color theory, and then barbering going on. I would love to share the stories and learnings from those experiences, but I don't have time for that now. But I'll tell, we ended up doing those things because we had the idea of developing Koulu School for extreme conditions. And we decided to take the Koulu School to Burning Man Festival. Does anyone know that festival? Yeah, or festival and festival. And to use that as our experimentation platform. And this is your experimentation platform. It's a Black Rock Desert in Nevada in USA. And our experiment was to build this 120 square meter architectural structure. It's algorithmic. It's a prototype of algorithmic architecture based actually in very old building technique out of wood. In addition to that, it had a space signal receiver and sender in it, which took signals from space, turned that into light and sound installation, and allowed people to send messages to space. And just to give you an idea, we are not the only ones experimenting there. It's 75,000 people that get in there, build a city for a week, and then disappear without leaving a trace, with all kind of crazy projects. But the crazy thing there was that we were a group of 40 volunteers, the core team a lot smaller, of architects, carpenters, artists, beauticians, accountants, and whatnot. But that didn't really matter. Nobody was asked papers or their experience on doing things, but the doors were open for people to join and contribute and take a role what they wanted or could take. And but I can tell you that nobody had the experience of building something like that to anywhere, but especially in the conditions of it's burning hot, it's windy, it's dust storms, and yeah, it's a crazy environment to do anything. So it's basically a project that should not have been done. So people were really pushing their own limits and collective limits in making that happen. And now back to Harari. He's also thinking, like, so what are the skills that we should be teaching because we can know what's valid in the future? And he points out that the most important of all will be the ability to deal with change, to learn new things, and to preserve your mental balance in unfamiliar situations. And I can tell you, these kind of projects, they teach you all that. Hard ways and fun ways and desperate ways. These are some of the learnings that I've collected from people who've been taking part in there. People are saying that now I've let go of plan and order way of doing things. I learned to look at what is actually important, how we make that happen, and let everything else go. Or when things change, I'm hard to be shocked anymore. I just try to find a new way of doing what we're doing. I lost my inferiority complex professionally here. The only thing that mattered was the goal and how we make that happen together. One thing is that in the end, you burn the whole thing. You build it for 6 months, you plan it, you build it for a week, and it's there for a week, and then you burn it. I can tell you later on what effects that has to a project and people. But what I think what we can learn from these kind of environments, these learning environments, is that there is much power there, that you're building something, you have a shared goal, and you're going to it together, and you fail so many times while doing that, and you're doing it for real. It's not a study project. You're doing it for real because you wanted to make it with the others and you wanted to make it for the other participants, but it's still a safe space because it doesn't really matter if it would completely fail, because in the end, it's a festival. But then my final point, I ran out of time, but my final point is that it's a question. So I asked in Facebook some time ago, like, hey, if you had 2,000 euros for educating yourself by your employer, what would you do? And nobody was suggesting me a course. Everybody was like, buy these books and go to countryside and take, a week off and read them. But if you would tell your employer, I'll take those 2,000 euros, I will go to Burning Man, I will cover some of my costs with that 2,000 euros and come back. No employer would say, just do it. It's not considered learning or training. So my question is, like, what we're really after with the lifelong learning, and what can be some of the even very radical ways of providing those opportunities to people?